sinful in so many ways, and yet a new creature in you. Would you come with your power, I pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. Tim Stafford, in an article in Christianity Today, it's been some time, but he tells the following. He says, a pastor I know, Stephen Belinsky, starts each confirmation class at his church with a jar full of beans. And he asks his students to guess how many beans are in the jar. And on a big pad of paper, he writes down their estimates. Then, next to those estimates, he helps them make another list, their favorite songs. And when the lists are complete, he reveals the actual number of beans in the jar. And then the whole class looks over their guesses to see which estimate was closest to being right. And then Belinsky turns to his songs and he says, which one of these is closest to being right? Well, the students protest that there's no right answer on your favorite song. A favorite song is purely a matter of taste. Then Belinsky, who is a philosopher, says when you decide what to believe in terms of your faith, is that more like guessing the number of beans or more like choosing your favorite song? And always, he says, from old as well as young, he gets the same answer. Choosing one's faith is more like choosing a favorite song. That's the culture we live in. The philosophy of our day is do what seems right to you. In the words of that wonderful theologian, Oprah Winfrey, follow your own truth. What's your truth? And so which path has this led us down? Well, it's led us down the path of least resistance. Makes sense, doesn't it? If my truth is my truth, then I'm going to do what seems best for me. I'm going to follow what is best for my life because this is my truth after all. So maybe you say that that's not really true in the evangelical church, especially a Bible-believing church like ours. We might believe that the Bible is true, and we attempt to learn our theology from the Bible, but it seems to me that this kind of your truth has crept in way more than we would care to admit. Why is it that the PCA is mostly suburban, white, upper middle class denomination? Oh, that hurt. Why is it that we tend to be most of the time with the people that make us comfortable and avoid the people that don't? If Eastside Presbyterian Church ceased to exist, would our community, would our neighbors miss us? There are so many questions to ask ourselves. They're hard questions. So I believe that we should be a church for our community, and I think that the two passages that I've picked today, as I pondered over this, I was debating between the two, and then I thought, let's do both, because I think they both talk about the same thing. They come from different perspectives, but they both talk about the same thing. So let's look at these two passages. First, let's look at the Jeremiah passage. Jerusalem had fallen. Judah, the people of Judah had been taken into exile to Babylon. And the way the Babylonians did this thing was they would conquer a nation, they would bring the people into exile, and then they would give them freedom. They would teach them their culture, and they would want them to get involved in their culture and to become basically Babylonians. To become like them, because if you conquer them, if you can get them to change their culture to be like yours, they're a lot less likely to rebel against you. And this was their methodology. But the Israelites had no intention of becoming like the Babylonians, because the Babylonians were not only a dreaded people, they were a wicked people. They were a pagan people. They were an unclean people. They were Gentiles. They were not going to have anything to do with them. And besides, there were some false prophets running around saying that within 2 years, you'll be back from exile. You'll be back in Judah. You'll be back in Jerusalem. So they wanted to listen to these false prophets. And so they were just going to hang in there, not have anything to do with the Babylonians. They were going to hang in there, and they were going to wait it out and do their own thing in this little clan. Isn't that what so many churches in America do? We keep to ourselves because we're more comfortable that way. New people come in. If they're like us, they might break in, but they might not. They might not break in because we're comfortable. We're comfortable. We stay in our little group. It's a little scary to move outside the comfort zone. But that sounded reasonable for the Israelites, didn't it? To stay in their little group, because after all, they were going back in a couple of years, and they might get they might get tainted by these Babylonians, wicked Babylon. Who knows? They may start worshiping the Babylonian gods or something like that. That's why this passage is so surprising. The letter that God sends them through Jeremiah. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and settle down. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there. Do not decrease. Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I've carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. What is he telling them? He's saying that their exile isn't going to be over anytime soon, and that they should be about the business, not of forgetting who they are as Israelites, as God's people, but about the business of blooming where they're planted. Build houses, settle down, get your kids married, plant gardens. And here's the big one: seek the prosperity and the peace of the city. Try to make the city where you are living the best place it can be. As far as it is within your power to change things. Do it for the sake of the peace and the prosperity of the city. Clearly, it's a mandate for us too to get busy in our society, to seek the peace and the prosperity. It doesn't say seek our own peace and prosperity. We're good at that. We do that all the time. It says go look far beyond yourselves. What does it mean? It means we're to push back on darkness. It means that our prosperity depends on other people's prosperity. Our peace depends on other people's peace. Where there are people floundering and struggling and living in poverty and living without peace, that is where we're supposed to be. See, real peace only exists to the extent that there's peace for everybody. Otherwise, we're just covering it over. There's another alternative, which is the road that most of our society goes down. It's the alternative is making as much money as you can so that you can insulate yourself from places that have no peace and from really poor areas. Let the poor people fight it out. That's their problem. Let the crime-infested areas deal with their own problems, and that's why we hire the police. Let the police get in there and do that kind of stuff. But we will escape all that and live in nice areas, and we will insulate ourselves from having to even look at that. And so the wealthy get more opportunities and the poor get fewer. And this, of course, only exacerbates the problem. but we're being called to seek the peace and the prosperity of the city. Can we say that a city really has peace and prosperity if it has large sections within it that do not have that? Can we say that? It reminds me of that movie, The Hunger Games, where the people in the capital city were living large. They were loving it. Things were good in the city. But it was all at the expense of the outlying settlements, all at the expense of those places that had to produce things for them. They were living large. They weren't thinking about the outlying areas. And then the greatest thing was the games. People that came from the outlying areas. And they loved to watch the sport of people killing themselves. They were having a wonderful time. But see, the whole thing didn't really work, right? Could we say that there was peace in that entire kingdom or in that entire country? Could we say that? No. No, there were so many that did not have peace, and the thing came apart. Destroyed itself. What does it mean for us? It means that every one of us, this is the call of the gospel of Jesus Christ, should be involved somehow in alleviating suffering. It's not really optional, and I think it comes in two varieties. We're called to preach the gospel to everyone. Obviously, people have spiritual needs. They need to know Jesus. They need to be able to lay their burdens down. Some of us haven't laid our burdens down very well, let alone helping other people lay their burdens down. But we need to be preaching the gospel to people. And second, I believe we're to be involved in physically alleviating suffering wherever we find it. Wherever we find it, it's our mission in life. Every one of us needs to be involved in some kind of activity to help reduce poverty and bring prosperity and peace to our city. There is no peace, really, in a city where that doesn't exist for everyone. We can't say we have peace and prosperity. Are we willing to leave our comfort zone? That's the question. Jesus did for us. That's the message of Jeremiah. What about Psalm 84? So if Jeremiah is telling us to break out of our little circles and to seek peace, I think that Psalm 84 is telling us the exact same thing, but from a different perspective. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, who have set their hearts on pilgrimage. As they pass through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. They go from strength to strength till each appears before God in Zion. In the days of the psalmist, God's presence was at the temple, and people made pilgrimages to the temple to sacrifice there and to do all the things that they needed to do. They had to go to the temple to do that. And they would often go, usually once a year, people would go, people that did not live in Jerusalem would make their way up to Jerusalem. Sorry, I got a call. And it may be what's referred to here, but I do think it's something a lot deeper than that. I think there's a deeper meaning. And I think it is this, that we are all on pilgrimage. We're not home yet. We're on pilgrimage, and we're passing through the valley of Baca. Now, that could be just the name of a valley, or it could mean a valley of tears. I think we're passing through the valley of Baca, and look at what it says, that as people on pilgrimage, people that are going to be in the presence of God himself, as they pass through the valley, it becomes a place of springs. And where there is water, there's vegetation and there's blooming. It's saying the exact same thing that Jeremiah said. Wherever we are, we bloom. The north of Chile is the driest desert in the world. There's places that have never recorded rainfall. But on the southern end of the desert, most of the time it's very, very arid, very, very dry. But it will rain sometimes. The beginning of the rainy season, it will rain sometimes. And the place becomes converted into a flower garden. I put up a couple of pictures here. Look at that. That's a desert. When it rains, look at the next one. Is that unbelievable? This is what happens when it gets a little bit of rain in a desert area. It blooms. That's what I envision in Psalm 84. I envision that as pilgrims pass through the desert, they leave blooms wherever they go, wherever they are. I think that's the point. It's the same point as Jeremiah 29. We need to be involved in this kind of activity. Now, I could end it there, and I could just drive that point home and make you feel guilty about it, because you people need to be doing this. But I'm not going to end it there because I don't think we can do it unless we know the why of it. Unless we know the why of it. Let's say we're able to bring peace and prosperity to our city. What if Greenville completely turned around and we brought peace and opportunity and great, wonderful things for every single citizen of Greenville? What then? Is that the goal? No, it's not. I think that the biggest problem in the American church is that we've forgotten we're pilgrims. And we've made a life for ourselves in the desert. We're getting it to bloom in our little corner of our world. We're getting it to bloom, and we're comfortable with that. We're comfortable. We've built a life for ourselves and for our children. We've convinced them that their purpose in life is to have fun. That with friends in sports or in school or wherever, we've convinced ourselves that our comfort is deserved because we've worked hard from, we've come to expect it. We've made ourselves at home in the desert. We've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten that we're pilgrims. We're not home yet. We insulate ourselves from the negative influence, and then we wonder why we live with no spiritual power, with prayerlessness, with little desire to read the Bible. We wonder why we're tired all the time. We wonder why we're bored. We wonder why life is so hard. We wonder why we get angry so easily. And it goes on and on and on. The point is not to seek the peace and the prosperity of the city. Of course we want to do that. That's who we are. It's in our DNA. See, the point is to seek the only one who can bring peace and prosperity. It's what verses 1 and 2 of Psalm 84 say. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord Almighty. My soul yearns, even faints, for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. It's not about the seeking of the peace and the prosperity at all. It's about how you yearn. It's about your yearning. What do you yearn for? Love that word, yearn. Just sort of rolls off the tongue. How's your yearning, brothers and sisters? See, if your yearning for the things around you is greater than your yearning for God Himself, then it means you become comfortable. You've set up house in the desert and you're planning to stay for a while. It's a sure sign you're not really seeking the peace of the city, but your own peace, your own little niche, own little corner. What do you yearn for? Simon Tugwell, a friar, says this: it is the desire for God, which is the most fundamental appetite of all. And it is an appetite we can never eliminate. We may seek to disown it, but it will not go away. If we deny that it is there, we shall in fact only divert it to some other object or range of objects. And that will mean that we invest some creature or creatures with the full burden of our need for God, a burden which no creature can carry. We do this with our spouses. We expect our spouses to be God in our life. And when they don't do what we want, we're angry and we manipulate. We expect our kids to be the perfect children that don't sin at all. And when they do something wrong, we're all over them because it reflects more on us than it reflects on them. This is how we live, with a little yearning for the only one that can satisfy our desires. Jesus made his way into our darkness to give us a glimpse of the Father and to tell us how much the Father loves us. For some of you, that's really hard to get. It's hard for me to get. The Father really loves us. And he sent his Son. He came to show us how self-centered pursuits only make us miserable. We walk around miserable a lot of the time. Sadness, fear, and anger grip our hearts. And we say, where's God when we need him? Where is he when we need him? And yet, he's there all the time. Jesus came to show us that the way down is the way up. The path of self-sacrifice for the sake of a loving Father is the path of power and fulfillment. The path of my giving myself for others is the path that also leads me directly to him. And Jesus did that, and he gave his life for you and for me. What is it going to take for us to yearn for Jesus? What is he going to have to do to us? What is he going to have to do to the church in America? What's he going to have to do to America for us to bow our knees and to come to him and say, I yearn for you. I want nothing else. My heart and my flesh, they cry out for the living God. Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. For Harry Adams from North Carolina, God got his attention by giving him Lou Gehrig's disease. This is what he says. Recently, my wife and daughter and I were reading Psalm 37. When we came to the 4th verse, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. I asked if this was true for me. I'm crippled by Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a progressive and fatal neurological illness. In the years I've had ALS, it's taken my voice and robbed me of the use of my limbs. It also forced us out of our lovely home. Is the promise of fulfilled desires true for me and for the millions of other believers who have had their plans and dreams shattered? Yes, it's true, exceedingly so. I desire a healthy body, and Jesus promises me a body that is powerful, incorruptible, glorious, and spiritual. I desire a home that is beautiful and spacious, and he is preparing such a home for me in a city whose builder is God. I desire a world without crime, lies, or violence, and he promises me a world where righteousness dwells. I desire to be with those I love, and he promises that I will be caught up together with them forever. I desire an end to my sorrow, and he promises me fullness of joy in his presence. I desire a heart so filled with love that there's no room for sin, and He promises to make me like Jesus when I am in heaven. I desire a ministry, and He promises I will serve Him eternally. I desire a voice with which to praise Him, and He promises I will sing before His throne. Most of all, I desire to see Him, and He promises I will always behold His face. He will keep His promise to give me the desires of my heart. We are not home yet. Why are we so comfortable in the desert? Yes, we make it a place that blooms, but no, it is not our home. No, it is not. And that changes our perspective on everything. See, if we seek Him and know that we were on our pilgrimage, on our way to meet with our God, yes, He will meet with us here, but it changes everything about who we are. It changes our perspective on everything. Work is no longer a place just to get ahead, or a place, but it becomes a place where I can use my gifts to bless people. My money is no longer just for selfish pursuits, but a way to bless people and help them bloom. I teach my children that they shouldn't get too comfortable because they're not home yet. But along the way, we will invest in others. Our neighborhood becomes a place of opportunity where we look for ways to bless our neighbors, not because we have some big hidden agenda, but because this is who we are as pilgrims. To be with our God. My soul and my flesh cry out for the living God. This is the gospel.